Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet.
Hello guys, gals, and anyone with sex organs. It's me, your girl, Mariel. And I'm here to deliver another insightful, possibly cringy episode for you today. How fun. This podcast is brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Please go check out their page. If you decide this episode isn't for you, try one of their other hundreds of episodes that they have on any topic. Okay, be honest. Gotta be honest with me here. When you read the title, you cringed and you laughed, but you were also super curious. Am I right? I think I'm right. When I think about podcast topics, I like to think about what I would want to know more about, what my audience would want to know more about, and also what my audience would maybe not want to know about. So today's episode is going to be about why the hell bestiality exists. How did we survive the old days doing this kind of stuff to animals from now, current times, and where it is illegal. We're going to dive into the history of it and why people engaged sexually with animals, the case behind it, many famous cases, and then the cultural kind of impact behind it. You know, a lot of deep-rooted history with bestiality. I know what we all may be thinking. Why am I talking about bestiality? Well, it is, for better or for worse, part of the sex community. There is a large amount of people in the bestiality community. They're also called zoophiles or zoophilia, or like they call themselves zoos, the zoos, and they are people that are interested in animals in a sexual way. That is a definition. Bestiality, on the other hand, is actual fornication with an animal. Again, you may be thinking, why am I talking about this on a podcast? Well, it is about sex. It's about it's a subculture that is in the wonderful, mysterious, complicated world that is everyone's sex lives. And I'm kind of here to uncover why people want to have sex with animals, what the history behind it is, why it's criminalized, where it's not criminalized, where it's in people's cultures and histories, and really all that fun stuff, and, you know, some more relevant things, because we've all heard the stories on Twitter about people saying that they've been into having sex with dogs, and you're like, what the hell am I even getting it? You're like, why? Ew. Cancel him immediately. But there is a culture behind it. There is an entire history, an entire culture behind it. And we're going to dive into it, whether you like it or not. But if you don't like it, again, you can always skip over this one. I have a lot of other really good ones. I have a lot of other good episodes that you can listen to on the GSMC Sex Podcast Network. So it's okay. It's okay. But I know that I wanted to learn more about this. I knew that I wanted to talk about it because I also wanted to do my own history behind it. I mean, my own research into the history behind it. I really wanted to make this podcast about purely facts and some opinions on other sides, each and other sides of the spectrum, and those that are in the middle, history, the stories behind it, the trials behind it. I really wanted to get a nice well-rounded, opinion, or well-rounded, not bias. I'm not biased necessarily to anything. I think I have my opinions, but I know secretly deep down I want them to change. I know that I'm really open to change of how my opinion goes. I really am. So I'm hoping that this will kind of give me more insight. And I think the show I have lined up for you really does kind of give a little bit more insight into it. But it's interesting to think about and also to understand, because they're animals, We are animals ourselves, but we can talk, we can feel, we can express through words how we feel. We can also hypothesize and have deep thoughts. We can write thesis papers about fetishes. They can write a whole essay on podcasts. And animals cannot. But that doesn't mean that they are less than us. While animals can't, doesn't mean that they're less than us. They're developed in different ways. They're more primal ways. But why bestiality? Why? I'm sure all of us wonder, and I'm sure all of the animal rights advocates are quick to jump the gun on this one and give you an explanation as to why bestiality is a thing. And I'm sure the people who are, the zoos themselves, I'm sure they also have their opinions, and I'm going to share both of them. So, by definition, bestiality is when a human has sexual intercourse with an animal. Also, this is a quick PSA. Don't do this. I'm not condoning this in any way. I'm not telling you that you should go out and do it. I'm more telling you about the people who have done it. Or who have been criminally tried for it, or the people that are advocating to do it. So, just want to throw that in there really quickly. So, there are a lot of controversies, as you can tell already, about bestiality. The actual sex act, or zoophilia, which I had talked about. The desire to perform those acts. So, a lot of them are split between whether humans should have the right to do so, engage in sex with animals. In fact, when you Google that right now, many people question why it's illegal or why it's legal. Many people are questioning if the people who are attracted to animals have a mental disorder. Is it something that you're born with? Is it something that makes you a little bit off? Which I don't think it is. I think going back to, one of my last podcasts, I had talked about kind of what makes a kink, how kinks are developed. And it's through childhood, believe it or not. It's through your more, developmental years that you watch stuff on TV. It's not erotic. It's not always erotic. Yes, you can stumble upon an erotic commercial or episode of, accidentally while your parents are away, but it's not always about that. It's about the way that you feel when you watch certain things, like the superheroes getting, in peril and getting captured. You could feel very special towards that. You can feel a special feeling towards that. That doesn't mean sexual, but you could like that, and it sticks with you. So where I think it comes from is childhood. Seeing, what from your childhood, that is up to you to determine. But I think it definitely does stem from your childhood, and I don't think it's trauma. I think, like most kinks, some of it is erotic and some of it's not erotic. So I feel like that's kind of where I'm trying to go with this. I'm trying to be as nonpartisan as possible, I promise. So it's a lot, but I promise you, bear with me. So an article published by Justin Lemiller took a survey of about 1,000 zoophiles about their beliefs and sexual practices. So I want you to take that into note. 1,000. For many, what they found attractive about animals was their genitalia and their odor. So what the size of their genitalia, whether it was big or small, the odors. Animals have odors, we have odors. Animals have different smelling odors than us. And it was also about the taboo nature of the activity of itself. I mean, when you grow up, you are kind of taught the rights and the wrongs of the world. I know that when I was smaller, it was like, when you're 18, you cannot be in a relationship with somebody who is younger than you. And I really took that to heart and was like, okay, all right, no worries. So in growing up, that was ingrained in myself. For a lot of people, it's a taboo nature to have sex with an animal. I mean, it is. It's absolutely taboo. So he did another study with about 114 men, aged 18 to 70, all men, by the way, who reported sexual interest in animals. A whopping 93% of these men identified as zoophiles, people who are sexually attracted to animals. Average about of the 114 men, 8 different animal partners were reported by participants. So that was kind of like, again, whether they were dogs, whether they were cows, they didn't really specifically say, but 8 different species. 63% who reported having sexual intercourse with animals reported it was with a dog. It was with a dog. And 50% of men said that being unpopular in high school contributed to their interest in animals. Yeah. Being unpopular contributed to their interest in animals. So, and then also, catch this, 99% of those men said that being drunk or high had nothing to do with their sexual interest in animals. This wasn't I was drunk, or, I was drunk when I took the survey. It was not that. Clear-headed, clear-minded, very much sober, easily, giving all they have into this. So, what do we get from this? It's a real thing. Zoophile or bestiality is a real thing. It happens IRL, in real life. People who enjoy this see nothing wrong with a man having sex with an animal. In the study, a man quoted, I'm going to quote him saying, "Humans use sex to manipulate and control. Humans have trouble accepting who you are. They want to change you. Animals do not judge you. They just love and enjoy the pleasures of sex without all the politics." So, that's what he said. The view is just pure animalistic sex between a man and his dog, which I'm trying not to judge. I'm really trying hard not to judge, but it's kind of hard when you grow up in such a way that when your beliefs are so shaken to its core. Like, again, when I was doing a lot of this research, I was like, man, I can see it both ways. I really can. I could see it PETA's way, the animal rights activist, super hardcore. And I can also see the zoophiles, or however you want to say it. I can also see it their way too. They have an inherent attraction to animals. God, it's so hard. I can really see it both ways. And I think that's why I really wanted to do this topic on the podcast, because I wanted to know what you guys have to say about this kind of topic and what your guys' opinions are. But I also kind of wanted to, debunk some of my own understandings, and I wanted to kind of prove myself wrong. I guess I wanted to give myself another idea of how to look at things, specifically with bestiality. Cause I know that when I was small, I just thought it was a bunch of people, small as in like 15, 14, they were dancing around a fire and they would pull out the goat and start having sex with a goat. And I was like, oh my God, is that what bestiality is? And my mom was like, yeah, it can be like that. It sure is sometimes. Don't do it. And I was like, okay, all right. I won't do it. I won't have sex with a goat. All right. So, but obviously I want to know why. I want to know what other people's feelings are about this. And there's so much controversy behind it. Like I said, there's just so many things to say. I'm trying hard not to judge. Most zoophiles can agree that they are a subcategory in this fetish. There's subcategories in this fetish. And again, I'm going to call it a fetish for fetish sake because we are talking about sex. Some people call it sexual assault against animals. I too would like to think it is that way, but I also, for the sake of the podcast, I'm gonna be in the middle right now. But there are subcategories in this fetish. There are those that appreciate from afar. There are those that actually do have sex with animals. There are those that don't know where their desire comes from. And those that attribute it to social circumstances, like being isolated. So there is an awareness. I mean, just like any kink, some people don't know where it comes from. Other people like other fetishes. I think I want to categorize it as a fetish here. Something an object that you desire. No, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to categorize it as a kink. I would like to categorize this as a kink. I'm like making my mind up on air. That's funny. That's really funny. Good job, Mariel. So moving forward with this, one of the commenters on this post typed, I and most zoophiles are not attracted to animals because they are novel, taboo, or wet, or hairy, or smelly. Sure, there are parts of the normal spectrum of sexual attraction, but they're by no means a defining characteristic of our orientation. The simple fact is that the zoos don't know why we love animals. And the zoos means the group. Neither do some of the researchers. All of these superficial reasons why are just trite, rationalized after the fact. It's a part of who we are, which, like any other orientation, comes from below the level of conscious introspection. So, again, I agree and disagree to this justification. I think that everyone has some kind of idea of where their sexuality comes from, where their kinks come from, their childhood, and that stuff that you would interact with, again, either erotic or not erotic, from where as a kid. But I think it stems from your childhood. I'm gonna hold my stance on that, and I think it does. So I think there is a way that you can find out. You can look into your conscious introspective and understand where exactly it comes from. Because I believe that all fetishes or kinks have a place where they come from, in my opinion. Again, that's just my opinion. Again, as crazy as it might sound to them or me or you, as taboo as it might sound, they embrace it, but often it gets shut down or hated on for their fetish. That's exactly what happens to them. They get hated and they get ousted and ostracized and I feel for them. I really feel for them. I think it's hard when you have your sexual orientation or you have something that really turns you on and you are still trying to figure out where exactly it comes from. I think it comes from your childhood, but when you're on that path to realization and you're denied who you are. Again, I'm not saying is like being a homosexual like myself, that's like is really hard for it to grapple with. But you know, even a lot of this research that I was doing online, a lot of these people who are zoophiles, they're coming out as this second wave of it's like the second sexual awakening. I think that's what it is. They're starting this movement, dead ass, I promise. The second wave of sexuality, they're at the forefront where they're really trying to get recognized and normalized. And I feel for them. I really do. I feel for them. And I want to dig a little deeper into my research before I really am like, yes, or really like, absolutely not. I'm very in between right now, but I do see both sides. Here's the problem that I see right now. Animals cannot give consent. They cannot. They can't. They just can't. They don't speak English. They don't speak Spanish. They do not speak any language except for bark bark. They verbally cannot say yes. And I think that's the problem. That's the problem here. Where it comes down to for me is the cultural and the cultural and historical significance of it. The cultural, by the way, I'm in no means saying go have sex with an animal, because do not do that. Do not do that. I'm merely saying that my own position is, I'm getting swayed in different ways because of the research that I've done. But also, there is a lot of culture and history behind bestiality. People in their cultures have revered this for a very long time. A part that I'll get into my last topic, is the cultural significance of it. We can't deny that. As somebody who is in the West, a Western person, I cannot go to anybody and say, your culture is bad. Your culture is disgusting. Your culture is offending me. Because that's not right. Their culture has history, and their culture is their culture. So, especially as a white woman, I cannot do that. I really cannot do that. I cannot deny their existence, and I cannot deny the things that they have experienced in their culture. I really can't. All I'm here to present is facts, things that I know, and maybe some of my opinions where they maybe shouldn't belong, but I'm gonna give it to you anyways. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. That's a lot. Let's go on break. Let's do that. This is a lot. This is a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of head moving around, and it could be a little bit confusing. And I'm hoping to straighten this out throughout the entire podcast. So please bear with me. All right. When we get back, let's talk about the history.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Enjoyed your nice, peaceful break without your ears being violated for 2 seconds. I really hope you enjoyed that break. You're not going to get that for another 15 minutes. Sorry. Let's get back to violating those ears. So we're going to talk about the history of bestiality. I also hope you are all having a good day and this didn't ruin it, because that would be shit, and I'm so sorry. That would be really sad. All right, I'm going to get my announcer voice on. Since the dawn of time, men have been documented via wall drawings, paintings, texts, having sex with animals. I don't really sound right doing that. I'm just going to stop doing that. It's awful. In the fourth glacial period, which was between 40,000 and 25,000 years ago, cave drawings from the Stone Age demonstrated that prehistoric ancestors frequently had sex with animals. They were found in ancient religious temples as well. In Babylon and the ancient empire in Mesopotamia, it was well practiced. However, King Hammurabi, 1955 through 1913 BC, proclaimed death to any person who engaged in bestiality. This quickly was disregarded due to the various texts writing about the spring fertility rites of Babylon, where dogs and animals were used in orgies for 7 days and 7 nights. Yes, you heard it here first. Even the Bible has texts about bestiality, and the book of Leviticus describes having sex with animals as a very normal thing in the country of Canaan. Ancient Egyptians and ancient Greeks practiced bestiality and believed that it cured nymphomaniacs, which were people who are addicted to sex, if you didn't know what that means. These portrayals were on tombs, hieroglyphics, while ancient Greek had them in their mythology. They both share the common practice of adding bestiality into their religious practices. So fun for them. Wow. Several Egyptian kings and queens had a reputation for engaging with animals sexually, but was still punished by death in Egypt, but never in ancient Greece. The ancient Romans 100% engaged in bestiality. It was very widespread among the shepherds, and the Roman women were known for keeping snakes for sexual purposes. I don't know what they use the snakes for, and I love snakes, but that sounds super scary. I'm not gonna lie. A snake near my vagina? That sounds absolutely awful. I don't even want, how do you even do that? However, sex with animals was extremely uncool in the medieval times because it was against nature, they said. And in that, humans are blurring the clear lines between themselves as beings with a conscience and animals who are a separate category without the faculties of reason. Again, that's what they said, but I wouldn't necessarily put it like that. But it makes sense, though. It really does make sense. So even then, back then, there was still like, we have a clear conscience. Animals do not. This does not mix. We cannot blur these lines here. So I get it. Never a time in medieval history was it acceptable to do so. They would be punished by death. Punished. Tortured to death. Between 1630 and 1770, more than 600 men were executed in Sweden for sexual offenses with animals. And in 1773, a Lutheran pastor was reported to have called on the youth of Livonia and Estonia to desist from frequenting heifers, goats, and ewes. So basically he was like, please don't have sex with these goats and these heifers. Don't do it. Don't do it, dudes. And of course the youth were like, I'm gonna do whatever I want to. Sorry. But in the 1800s, they became much more common. More common amongst the people. Skipping ahead a little bit. By 1974, the farm population reduced 80%, and so went the percentage of practicing bestiality as a mass population. The percentage of males who reported occurrences of bestiality was 4.5% compared to the 8.3% in 1948. In females, it was 1.9%. The researchers kind of summed that it wasn't because of desire, but because of opportunity, because of the opportunity of having, that farmland. So now current to date, it's less, but it's still there. Honestly, all in all, people, I think it's always been a tricky subject all throughout history. Again, that was a very brief summary of the history, mind you, because there's a lot more out there, I'm sure. But when we get into the cases and the trials and stuff like that, it'll give you a little bit more clarity as to, currently how things are being dealt with. Currently, how people are being prosecuted and, what that kind of thing looks like. Because almost, not all of them, but a good amount of states in the U.S. have made it illegal for, a human being to have sex with an animal. But I think it's tricky either way that you look at it. I mean, you have ancient Egyptian kings and queens partaking. It's a part of the Bible in biblical times. It's been a thing for a very long time. I think also the takeaway from this is that it's not just some random thing that happened one time that we all agreed was bad. It's something to debate about, something to still have those, something to really spark up a conversation. Maybe not over dinner, but like maybe a coffee or like a cocktail, I mean, people were praised for it. Royalties engaged in it. Artists painted it. People were killed and tortured because of it. It's really back and forth in the sex community. I mean, like, I feel like a lot of people do not agree with bestiality, but there are some people who understand it. That's kind of where I am at. I understand it. I kind of get where they're coming from. I don't condone it. I do not condone it. Don't do it. Do not do that. All right. I need to go get a drink after this. I know this was a shorter segment, but I gotta get a little drink. 21 and over. You agree with me. Stay tuned after the break. I will be going to the criminality of bestiality, trials and current laws made because of it. So this is gonna be fun. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
What's up? I'm Mariel. Hello. Please don't forget to subscribe to the GSMC Sex Podcast for more content like this, or more content that is not like this, but maybe a little bit better. Maybe a little bit less bestiality wise. Again, I cannot believe how many times I've said the word bestiality today in this podcast. It's truly insane, and I want to burn it from my memory. In addition, make sure to follow us on Facebook at GSMC Sex Podcast. Yay. Let's get into it. How's everyone's break? I feel like an ugly hog. I just stuffed down some bread and butter, and now I'm ready to go. Ready to enjoy the bestiality talk I got going for you. So, to do a little recap, our topic still is, and will be for the next 2 segments, bestiality, the controversies, the history. Now we're talking about the legal side of it. It has decreased drastically from the 40s to the 70s and now 2020. It's a more underground thing now because it's illegal in many states and also many countries, which we'll get into next segment, and you're going to be very surprised at which countries bestiality is still legal in, which is it's kind of a fun little game. It's kind of a fun little thing. So, legal. In the historical side, I talked about, general people being sentenced to death because of bestiality or thrown in jail because of it. But let's get into the more specific laws enacted in some specific criminal trials. So in Pennsylvania, 3 men were charged with over 1,400 counts of sexual intercourse with animals in 2018. Terry, Matthew, and Mark have all lived in the same farm for years. Obviously, you can tell where this is going. Obviously, that's why you're listening. It was one of the men's child who reported to the police that all 3 men were having sex with at least 12 different types of animals over the course of 5 years. The men videotaped it happening and stored a lot of it. Again, over those 5 years, it was reported. In Pennsylvania, any sexual intercourse with an animal is penalized as a misdemeanor of the second degree. I believe all 3 of these men got like 3 years in prison, which is interesting. Again, it's interesting. They were penalized, but I think what really got them was the fact that they videotaped the whole thing, which to me is kind of disgusting. I don't like it. Ugh. I don't like it. But anyways, the next case. This one is you guys are gonna hate me for this, is the famous horse case. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, call up a buddy, call up a friend, call up your neighbor. Everybody knows about the horse case. It was a video that went viral. In viral fashion, it was absolutely heinous and gory, very gory, and also super sad and disgusting and a lot of different other things. And there was a huge public debate about this on an open forum with this video, talking about how this was disgusting and people who were involved in this should be criminalized or they should be criminals, should be tried as criminals. And other people were like, hey, let them live, like whatever, it doesn't really matter. Animal rights activists and also other people were like, dude, the animal cannot give consent. This is like sexual assault. And I'm just like scrolling through it being like, they all make such good points. So good. So good points. I don't know which one to pick. I don't even know. I don't even know how you say that. So anyways, I'm gonna give you a little bit of it. So it was basically went viral, and I believe it was like 2007, and obviously it's, still circulating now, and it's crazy now, but kids, teens, and adults at any age can watch this horrific video of a horse penetrating a man anally. And you're thinking to yourself, why would I ever watch that? No, you don't have to. But I can tell you, millions of Americans, and I'm sure millions of Europeans already have. And also anybody else out there who has internet access. You don't have to watch it, don't watch it, please don't watch it, but other people can tell you about it. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because the people that were in the video were eventually criminally tried. And it is important to talk about because they are practicing bestiality, but they're also zoophiles, zoophilia. They had zoophilia, or they do have zoophilia. So I'm going to take a step back. He received horrific fatal injuries. Kenneth, the man that was pictured in the video, that was circulating the internet, which why kids would watch, I don't know. Shock value. But the man in the video suffered brutal injuries, was eventually left at a hospital, and he died. He died very shortly after. Autopsy ruled that basically it impaled his entire body, and it was horrific. But before I get into that, it was the Seattle Times reported on this story, and that's kind of when it went viral. So the video wasn't published first. It was this story that published first about this happening, about this man being killed from impaling, himself, or the horse impaling him with his penis. And that's horrific. That's horrific. But it was a case that Washington passed a bill on prohibiting sex with animals. So because it happened, because this man lost his life, from obviously reckless acts that he could have easily prevented, but nevertheless, it is sad. Because of this, Washington passed this bill, this bestiality bill, which is great. It's good for them. I mean, I think it's positive steps, because people are so angered over this, and people are so frightened and scared for animals about this, that Washington finally was like, all right, enough's enough. I need to pass this bill right now. I need to do this, or else I'm never going to hear the end of it, which is true, because there are a lot of people that are advocating for their rights, which is again, good for them, really good for them. So it's currently punishable up to 5 years in prison because of bestiality. So that is punishable up to 5 years, according to in the state of Washington. But there's more to the story about the man. The man name was Kenneth. Like I said, he lived a relatively unsuspecting life. It sounds like I'm describing a horror story, but I promise you, I'm really not. He was building a new house and a barn to keep horses. So he already knew that he already knew that he wanted to have sex with horses. He already knew that bestiality was in his life. He already knew this. So he can keep a horse in it, so he can enjoy that horse when he wanted to. His life kind of took a turn when he got into a motorcycle accident and lost certain sensations, leading him to experiment with more sexual acts, fisting, dildos, and receptive anal sex with horses. The one thing that I will point out, nearly every single article, every single forum, every single published journal that I've read for this podcast, it says the words sex with blank or sex with him, or it assumes the animals are consenting and enjoying it. So I just want to point that out there. You may be listening and saying like, well, why isn't she saying sexual assault? I would like to point out that these articles are blatantly saying sex and pleasurable sex with a human, or they're saying sex with a cow. They're not full on spelling out the word sexual assault. So the two words sexual assault, I should say. So I just would like to point that out before I continue on. These are their words, not mine. So the name Kenneth, lovely Kenneth, did live an unsuspecting life. So after experimenting with receptive anal sex with horses, he found a group of online men called the Zoos and began meeting up to film one another being anally penetrated by horses. They would get the horses to perform such acts by applying a horse breeding pheromone onto themselves. That is, oh my God. So that's a whole other thing in and of itself. Some can say it's deceptive. Some can say it's coercion. Some can say you're tricking the horse into thinking that that's something that it wants, something that the horse is, ready for. I really don't know what to think about it. I really don't know. I think I'm going to chalk it up to that. I do not know how to feel about this. And I would love a discussion with somebody about this, because in all the research that I've done, no one has said this. No one has said that they've used pheromones to entice the horse, to make the horse feel like they are attracted to this person. I don't know whether it's so deviant or whether it's smart and ingenious. I have no idea. All I'm saying is that's insane. That's just insane. So, the not so great part, the fact that they're like, bestiality is like the top of their list every single day. They would get the horses to perform such acts by applying, like I just said, breeding pheromone onto themselves. The law enforcement were fully aware that they were having sex with horses on private property. So it wasn't their property, it was somebody else's property. They were fully aware, mind you. However, on this night, Sergeant John Urquhart said that the horses weren't particularly receptive. So, I'm just gonna note, the sergeant fully was aware that all of this was happening and didn't say a damn thing. Did not say a damn thing. Kenneth was penetrated by a stallion. He was impaled by the stallion. And he was dropped off anonymously at the local hospital. He was found dead in the emergency room at age 45. You heard it here. 45. Police got his ID and went on to seize 100 VHS tapes and DVDs of hundreds of hours in men engaging in bestiality. That's just absolutely insane. So, moving forward with this, in Florida, State Senate Nat Rich of Sunrise proposed legislation earlier this year that would make bestiality a felony. Her bill was in response to the news reports on January 2007 when a man from Mossy Point was suspected of sexually assaulting and strangling a female goat. Okay, this is the one time that it talks about sexually assaulting. This is the one time in all of the articles that I've read where it talks about the goats not consenting, the animals not consenting. I don't know whether it is from personal bias that they're writing this from, if it's from opinion, if it's from just stating the fact that it was sex. That is a whole other game going into it. That's a whole other thing. But I would just like to point out that is the one time in the article that they talked about the words sexual assault in regards to an animal. So, yes, her bill was in response to the news reports. Mossy Point suspected of sexually assaulting and strangling a female goat. He was arrested months later in the abduction of another goat. Rich's bill unanimously passed in the Florida State Senate, but died in the House, when conservative legislators might have been bashful about devoting time to a bill about sex with animals. Don't you love that? In November 2011, 2 women and 1 man, all in their 50s and without prior convictions, pleaded guilty to bestiality offenses involving domestic dogs that occurred from 2008 to 2010. After protracted sentence hearings throughout 2012, the 3 defendants each received suspended prison sentences. The offenses were uncovered following posts to a public bestiality website by one of the defendants, resulting in a complaint to the police. Prior to 2008, South Australia recognizes the offense of buggery with an animal, which is sex with an animal, which attracted a maximum penalty of 10 years imprisonment. At the time, the other miscellaneous sex offense was incest. It was absolutely incest, was attracted the maximum penalty of 7 years. So, in 2008, the offense of buggery with an animal was amended to the present office as bestiality. At the same time, the maximum penalty for incest was increased to match that for bestiality, and they both remain at 10 years imprisonment. On the sentence, 3 defendants submitted that they thought bestiality was merely taboo, not a criminal act. They didn't think that they were doing anything wrong. Throughout the 2000s, those are just some of the hundreds on hundreds of bestiality cases. Almost all 50 states now have passed the Bestiality Bill, punishable by jail. It's just super interesting to me to read all these cases, some short, some longer than others, and some really describe the lengths that these people have to go to have sex with animals, or the lengths they have to go to hide the fact that they're having sex with animals. Here's a few things here. There is a few things here, I should say. These cases that I pulled up, some are not so horribly bad, and some are really bad. There are not so terribly bad ones that where they didn't really know it was illegal. They really didn't know that it was illegal, like that last one I just talked about. I think it might have been a genuine misunderstanding. They're adults, but they're also adults and they can look it up themselves, but they also could have been raised in a different way, that was completely fine. And I'm sure when they were raised, if they're adults in their 50s now, it was a way different time then. It might have been completely different. But also on the other hand, it's kind of a testament to how it plays out for now, right now. Some people are kind of on the fence about it. They're neither for bestiality nor against it, but they have the mentality where it's like, as long as I don't see, it doesn't matter to me. Like how straight men used to say about gay men. As long as they're not doing it in front of me, it doesn't matter. So I think I'll leave you with that. Is it better to know about these cases or to not know and just pretend that you do not see? Is it better to have an opinion? Is there a right opinion or a wrong opinion? I'm curious. I really am curious. Please share with me. I would love to hear what you have to say. Coming up after the break, we have our final segment about bestiality and culture. And sorry for violating your ears once again. I'm sorry. But I would also want to reiterate, I would love to hear from you guys what you have to say, what you have to think, what you have to believe. Did anything I've said so far, does it resonate with you? Does it make you feel sick? Does it make you feel good? I'm curious. I've done a little bit of, I've done research on both ends, at least trying to, and still more to come, but I would love to hear from your opinion. I would love to hear your guys' opinions. Please comment, but after the break.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America's Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to the final segment here on the GSMC Sex podcast. I am your host, Mariel. It's me. And to not do another recap, but to do another recap, here's what we talked about. We talked about what bestiality is, the research behind it, ancient and modern history, public trials, laws made about bestiality, and now we're going to talk about culture. The lovely culture. Where the bestiality culture is still accepted, or was accepted for a long time. Where is it? And then what countries is it illegal? Many cultures in the Arab countries, the Middle East, Africa, and the Americas had beliefs or customs that encouraged bestiality among its men. The belief that bestiality would lead to the enlargement of the human penis, that was fairly widespread. Arab men believed that intercourse with animals increased virility, cured diseases, and enlarged their penises. Likewise, among the Muslims in Morocco, fathers would encourage sons to practice sexual intercourse with donkeys to make their penises grow. So fun. Muslims believed that sex with animals prevented men from committing adultery. Turks also believe that sex with donkeys makes the penis grow larger. The human penis, by the way. Some nomad tribes in Africa incorporated intercourse with cattle as a ritual of passage for young males. Adolescent males in Igbo, a Nigerian tribe, for example, had to successfully copulate with specially selected sheep. It's a tongue twister. In front of the circle of elders. Among other tribes, it was a custom for hunters to engage in sexual acts with freshly slain animals while their bodies were still warm. This custom was seen among the Yoruba tribe, the tribe in Nigeria, Plains Indians, the Canadian Indian tribe of Saulteaux, and the Crow Indians. Currently, Egypt, Libya, Morocco, South Sudan, Cape Verde, Liberia, Mali, and many others have unknown statuses on whether it's illegal or legal to practice bestiality. However, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Alonga, Mozambique, and Madagascar all support the legality of bestiality. As for the Native Americans and Eskimos, bestiality varied from tribe to tribe. but was largely socially acceptable and went unpunished among the Navajo Indians, Crow Indians, Hopi Indians, the Sioux, or the Sioux, the Apache, Plains Indians, the Canadian tribe of the Saulteaux, as well as the Kupfer and Copper Eskimos. Men in Cartagena, Colombia, would make it an absolute practice for their men to have sex with donkeys. Apparently, all of the men in Cartagena are required to have sex with donkeys. According to the article, Donkey Lovers, Cartagena, Colombia. Resident Dione states, "Yup, they F their donkeys. I'm not bullshitting you. My neighbor has an uncle who does this with his donkey, and his donkey is a boy too." She goes on to say, "Yes, it's traditional for some people here, I think." Bestiality is still legal in Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Cambodia, Thailand, Japan, Russia, Finland, Hungary, Romania, and some states in the US, and also Guantanamo Bay, funny enough. Genuinely, in the US, as I'm sure many of you can attest to the fact, firmly believe that bestiality is wrong and should be criminalized. I'd like to point out a culture reference. Shane Dawson, a famous YouTuber, was caught in some heat a few years, or maybe like 2 years back, and has obviously resurfaced the video. The video has resurfaced in 2020. And the fact that cancel culture is real, it's really happening right now. The audio interview of him saying that he had sex with his cat and enjoyed it did a lot of other horrific things to his cat. Let's keep that clear. He said that he did a lot of other horrific things that I don't really want to get into the details of, but people all around the world were not having it. They were calling him disgusting, stupid, a rapist. He should go to jail. And his defense was that it was a joke. I did not sexually assault my cat. I did not come on my cat. I didn't do anything with my cat sexually. Fans were furious that he would bring in bestiality into his daily life or in his daily comedy, saying, "I cannot believe some of y'all are defending a grown man." So obviously there were other tweets out there saying like, "This triggered me," or "I think that this is absolutely wrong." Other people are saying, "That's just his humor style. You gotta get with it." Or other people are saying, if he wants to live his life that way, let him live his life that way. I think that's an interesting point. I think cancel culture is real with what's happening right now, but also I feel like joking about having sex with your cat's not a good thing. It's not a good thing because there are two very real sides to every story, in my opinion. There are the zoos and those that do not support the zoos at all. And or in the middle where they're like, I don't have either way and I just want to see both sides. Or the other part where they're like, I pretend I do not see. And I understand all of those. We're all entitled to our own opinions. We are all entitled to our own opinions. 100%. I think that advocating for what you believe in is important. And if you genuinely have questions about whether or not you believe in something or whether or not you believe that something is good or bad, I think it's important to start a debate about it, start a discussion. You know, you're never going to get your answers, but also, you're never going to get your answers if you don't speak it up, do your research or say it out loud to other people and have a debate. But also, you won't necessarily find any people to have, a rebuttal with. Maybe somebody brings up a really good point and you're like, you know what, I didn't even think about that. That makes so much sense. It makes sense to me. I know that I've done research about this topic and I know that there's still a lot more to do. I know that there's still a lot more things that I need to do on my end to figure out what I believe in, figure out both ways. I try to be as nonpartisan as possible, but I know that we all have our opinions and we all really want to stick to them. And there's nothing wrong with that. Have your opinions, but have a debate, have a discussion, make yourself feel uncomfortable sometimes, really dig deep onto why you feel a certain way. Bestiality has been here throughout thousands of years. Some used it for rituals, some used it for orgies, some use it as a cultural norm. All around, there are different opinions. Some are cultural-based opinions, some are legal-based opinions, and some people have no opinions about any of it. Some people just want to have sex with a horse and move on with their lives. Some people want those people to be criminalized or to be put in jail. It's just another kink that should be, some people think that it's just another kink that should be looked over, but other people think it should be banned. I believe that humans can love animals as much as they love other people, but I feel like there's still a lot of work that I need to do, whether or not that's right, whether or not that bestiality is even a right thing to do. I don't want to tell anybody else's culture that they can't do something, because I know it has tradition and history, and I don't want to deny somebody that, because that's not my place. But I would like to have a debate. I would like to have a discussion, because I want to know. I want to know what everyone thinks. I want to know what everyone feels. I do agree that animals can't speak any words. They can't understand what we're saying, but they can express fear. They can express hurt, and they can express happiness. They are functioning animals. They do that. So I think that makes me understand a little bit more about the point of animals can't consent. And I get it. I completely understand it. This week is a little different because I just wanted to learn more about bestiality and the culture of it. Without sticking my opinion necessarily coming, when we're places they don't belong, even though I actually did. All right. I'm going to stop ranting. I'm going to stop going off of it. I would love to hear what you have to say. I know this is super long-winded, but I promise it's making me feel great. I appreciate you sticking with it. That's all I have for you today. Please follow the GSMC Sex Podcast. Give me a like or give me a comment. Tell me if you hated it. Tell me if you didn't feel anything towards this. Most importantly, call me out. Tell me if I said something wrong. I want to know. I'm only as good as the people that hold me accountable for the stuff that I know, I want to hear it. Have I harassed your ears too much? Let me know. Make sure to like our Facebook page at GSMC Podcast Network. Tell me what you want me to do next. As always, I'm horrible with outros. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Sex Podcast.